What is up, guys? We're going to be taking a look at this lab DOM-based cookie manipulation. The high-level overview here is that it's possible to write an arbitrary value to a cookie in the victim's browser. That cookie then goes on to control functionality on a second page, and by tampering with the value of the cookie, we're able to set up a cross-site scripting attack vector. Now, if it doesn't make too much sense at the moment, don't worry too much. It will by the end of this lab. Without further ado, let's fire up the lab. To get a feel for the problem here, it makes sense to explore the basic functionality of this lab. So we're clearly on a shop page. Let's visit a product in the shop. We can see from the query string in the URL that this particular product has an ID of 1. Now, after visiting a product, if we head back to the home page, we'll see an additional hyperlink making an appearance. Last viewed product. If we follow that hyperlink, we get taken back to the product with the ID of 1. Now, there are various ways of achieving this type of functionality in a web app. For example, last viewed product could be stored in a database, could be stored in memory, or in this case, it's stored in the value of a cookie. Taking a look at the page source, we can see some spurious looking JavaScript. Document.cookie is being set to the following. So we are defining cookies here, has the name last viewed product, and the value of that cookie is being set to window.location. And we can confirm that that cookie is in fact being set. You could use a browser add-on for this. For example, we see last viewed product, and we can see that the value here is the same as window.location or the URL. Another way we could achieve the same result is to fire open the DevTools, head to the storage tab. We can see under the cookies dropdown, we have last viewed product. We once again have a value that's set to window.location, the URL. Now, here is where the vulnerability arises. We are assigning the value of document.cookie dynamically depending on the value of the URL bar. It's very easy for us to change the value of the URL bar. Therefore, we have the ability to change the value of the cookie. Let's see a very simple example of that. We have a look at the URL currently. We have product ID equals 1. Let's append an ampersand to add another key value pair to the query string. Let's simply change it to and zenshell equals 1. Okay, let's explore our cookies. Last viewed product. We can now see that the value of our first cookie here is the modified URL. We were able to append to the value of this cookie. Right now, on this page, that's not a big problem. But when we head to the home page, remember we have this last viewed product link. When we take a look at the page source of the home page, we spot that we have an anchor element with a href attribute. The value of that href attribute is the value of the cookie that's been stored. So over on the left-hand side, we see the request to the server. And as part of that request, we're sending along this cookie value, last viewed product equals, then we have the value of the saved URL. Notice it has the modified part of the query string here as well, zenshell equals 1. We send that off to the server. In the raw HTTP response that comes back from the server, we have an anchor tag with the href attribute set to the value of the cookie. The important way of thinking about this is that we are technically injecting into part of the HTML here. We're injecting into the href attribute of the anchor tag. And if you're thinking like a hacker, the first thought that may be crossing your mind is, okay, inside an anchor tag, can we break out of that? Because if we can break out of the anchor tag, we could maybe start injecting arbitrary HTML, which is going to include things like script tags, and then in between the script tags, some JavaScript. Let's head back to the product page. Let's start off by tampering with the value of the cookie by visiting a very specific URL. We're going to keep our ampersand in place. However, the first thing we're going to do is a single quote in an attempt to break out of the href attribute, then a closing right angle bracket, which is an attempt to break out of the anchor tag itself. Well, if we're outside of the anchor element, we can then start injecting our own HTML. Let's have a script tag. Let's call the print method in JavaScript. And now let's close script. Let's visit this URL. It's not going to impact on the functionality of the page directly, but if we take a look at our last viewed product cookie, we can see that we have changed the value of the cookie itself. Okay, with the value of our cookie set somewhat arbitrarily, let's head back to the home page and we see immediately the print function gets called. Let's take a look at the page source here, and the syntax highlighting in the browser generally gives us strong clues in terms of how the browser is interpreting the raw HTML that's coming back from the server. If we take a look at this anchor tag here, we can see the URL we made use of up until the ampersand. But notice what happens after the ampersand with our single quote. It actually closes the href attribute. Then notice what happens with our right angle bracket. It actually closes the anchor tag. In other words, we've broken out of the anchor tag at this stage. We then have open script, which allows us to write arbitrary JavaScript. We call the print method, then we close the script tag. Notice we then have a trailing single quote and closing right angle bracket. This was originally supposed to close the anchor tag that we broke out of, but since we did that prematurely, we're now left with the single quote and right angle bracket being rendered as plain text to the page. We can see next to last viewed product, we have a single quote and a right angle bracket. So we're here now at the exploit server. Let's think conceptually about how this attack is going to work. Anytime we're making use of the exploit server in Portswigger, the implication is that the victim is visiting an attacker-controlled domain, and the vulnerable lab is going to be loaded up inside an iframe. So here is how the attack works. The first time the victim visits the attacker-controlled domain, an iframe is loaded, and the source is set to our vulnerable URL, the URL that has script tags at the end of it, and the JavaScript print method called inside. The victim's browser loads up this page in an iframe, and in response to that page's source code, the value of the cookie is going to be set, and the value is going to be the current URL. Now at this stage, we don't have a cross-site scripting attack because all this does is set the value of the cookie. We actually need the victim to then head back to the home page so that the value of the cookie is used as part of the page. Remember, it appears inside that anchor tag as the href attribute. So we actually need to then convince the victim's browser to load up the home page afterwards. And we do that by using an onload attribute. So the onload attribute, it has a conditional. So it says if, then inside brackets for the conditional, we have an exclamation mark, which means not in JavaScript. So it says if not window.x. In other words, the JavaScript is looking for the value of window.x, and if it's not set, then this .source is going to be set to the URL of the home page. And remember, this, in this context, refers to the iframe. In other words, the iframe source is now going to be changed to the home page. So if window.x is not set, then the iframe now loads up the home page. So far, we have the victim visits the vulnerable URL, the value of the cookie set, the onload attribute is triggered, the source of the iframe is now set to the home page. So this is now the second visit for the victim to the page. Well, of course, since the value of the cookie is now set when the victim visits the home page, then the cross-site scripting attack is executed because the print method is called in JavaScript. The other thing that happens is window.x is set to 1. The only functionality of this is to prevent an infinite loop, because obviously the onload attribute will be triggered again once the iframe loads. Then of course this .source is going to be set to the home page again for as long as window.x doesn't exist. Window.x set to the value of 1 so that when the iframe finishes loading, there's no need to set the source attribute again on the iframe. Okay, let's choose the store option. The next thing we can do is view the exploit to see what the victim will see. So we can see the attacker controlled domain. We see an iframe loaded up on the attacker controlled domain, and we can see almost instantly the print method gets called. So this is proof of concept. The only thing that remains in order to solve the lab is now choose the option deliver exploit to victim. And you can see we get the message, congratulations, you solved the lab. Now, interestingly, this attack does still technically work, even if you don't have the onload attribute on the iframe. It's just that you'll have to run the attack twice, because remember, the first time the victim visits the page, all it does is set the value of the cookie. Then the second visit to the page actually activates the cross-site scripting attack. But if you didn't include the onload attribute here, and you actually delivered the exploit to victim twice instead, you would still solve the lab that way. It's just that in terms of cross-site scripting attack vectors, they are always considered stronger when everything is fully automated. So it's much better to get the victim to visit the attacker-controlled domain once, and the attack is complete, compared to hoping the victim visits the attacker-controlled domain a second time so that he gets exploited the second time round. Both are technically cross-site scripting attacks, which are successful, but one is stronger than the other. Alright, so this was DOM-based cookie manipulation. It's referred to as DOM-based because the value of document.cookie was assigned based on user input. Document.cookie is considered the sink in this particular attack. The second part of the attack, when the victim sends the manipulated cookie to the server and receives a raw HTTP response with the injected JavaScript, is actually a type of reflected attack rather than DOM-based. So the cookie manipulation was a DOM-based attack, but the cross-site scripting attack based on the tampered with cookie is actually a type of reflected cross-site scripting attack. That's because the vulnerability occurs in the raw HTML that's returned from the server. There's no further DOM manipulation that's required in order for the cross-site scripting attack to take place. Alright, hope you found the walkthrough helpful. Thanks very much for checking out the content. Look forward to catching you guys in the next lab.